It's getting cool and cloudy here in Southern California. In today's episode, we look at some harvests, some things to do in your garden, some great deals on gardening products, and a lot more. So sit back and enjoy this episode. To get notifications of all our videos, please click on the bell button right next to the subscribe button. We will take a tour of the California garden. We will look at the harvests we made this month. We have some cool things for you to do. And finally, we look at some deals on gardening products. So let's begin with the garden tour, starting with the raised beds. We have the black cobra pepper that's growing, and I'm trying to overwinter it. And right next to that, we have some brassicas. Basically, this means cabbages, cauliflowers, broccoli, and some other plants. And as you can see here, we started these from seeds, and they're growing pretty well. Right next to the cauliflower and cabbages, we have one bean plant. This is the hyacinth bean plant. And I've sowed some radish seeds that you can see here that have germinated now. Some radish and beets that are growing there. And then we have some okra plants that I still kept, though it's late in the season. And you can see the pole bean plant. It's become quite big, quite tall, and it's growing on the easy trellis. On the other side, we have some pea plants, as you can see here. Some broccoli plants that are growing. They have little holes in their leaves due to the caterpillars or worms, but I usually just handpick them. And next to the broccoli plants, we have some more radish, some white radish varieties, as well as some carrots that we sowed. And on the first bed, we removed all our eggplants and planted these onions. These are the white onions that produce smaller bulbs. And right next to the onions, we have the cauliflower plants. These are some more cauliflower plants that we were growing. And you can see there are some chili plants that I'm trying to overwinter as well. And that concludes the tour of the raised beds. Let's now move on to the containers. In the containers, we have the Swiss chard plant, as you can see here, followed by some more cauliflower plants. And I'm going to take a moment and zoom in to this plant. And you can see the worms, the caterpillars that are sitting along the leaf. There's one right there. And you can just handpick it and remove it. I do see a lot of these worms or these caterpillars sitting on the leaves, and they hide pretty well. But you can just handpick them and remove them. You can see there are a couple more on the plant. And right next to that, we have our eggplant. This is the container Little Prince eggplant. And I'll soon have a plant profile video on this variety. It's a pretty good variety to grow in your garden. And we have some more brassicas, cabbages, cauliflowers. And in this container, we have some radish plants growing. This is a tomato plant, and as you can see here, end of the season, it's beginning to die now. And we sowed some more radish seeds in this container. And there's a cabbage plant right there. We have some carrots that are growing. These were grown from seeds. And finally, we have the mint plant at the end. And this has been growing pretty well. On the other side, we have some ivy gourd plants. There are 2 pots now with ivy gourds. And we transplanted our mulberry tree into this container, followed by the curry leaf plant, the golden nugget orange plant, the orange tree that you can see here, producing oranges now, and the pineapple plant, which produced a lot of pineapples this season. And that concludes the tour of our containers. Let's now move on to the tour of our fruit trees. We have the Dancy tangerines that's loaded with tangerines, as you can see here. And right next to that, we have the Mexican guava tree that's producing a lot of guavas. The Bear's lime or the Persian lime tree that's loaded with limes. And we have the Washington navel oranges. The Washington navel oranges are growing pretty well and producing a lot of oranges. We have the Rajapuri banana plant, which has a lot of bananas growing. And we also have the Kishu mandarin plant The Kishu mandarin plant has grown well this year. And finally, we have the grape plant. Now, we did prune our grape plant last season, so it's not producing any grapes this year, but hopefully we'll get grapes in the next season. We also have our gem avocado tree, once again pruned very heavily this year, so hopefully we'll get a bigger harvest next season. So let's now look at the harvest we made this month, beginning with pole beans. Now, we put our easy trellis to good use by growing the pole beans over it, and as you can see here, the pole beans is an amazing producer. This is the Kentucky Wonder pole bean plant, and it produces a lot of beans. Now, we were harvesting beans from this plant almost every day, and as you can see here, great looking, good quality beans. And compared to bush beans, the pole beans not only produces good looking pods, nicely sized pods, but also a lot of beans. So I think if you can grow vertically on a trellis, the pole beans is a good plant to grow in your garden. Let's now look at cluster beans. Now, this is one of my gardening failures, at least in this zone here in Southern California. And I've tried to grow cluster beans for at least 3 seasons now. And all 3 times I got a very poor yield. As you can see here, the beans look pretty good. The cluster beans are very difficult to grow in this zone. So I don't think I'll be continuing to grow cluster beans in the future. Cucumbers. We were growing the bush cucumber variety. As some of you already know, we have been sharing our pictures of our harvest on Instagram as well. And as you can see here, this yielded a lot of cucumbers, and it's a pretty good variety to grow in your garden. We also harvested a lot of eggplants from our container Prince eggplant, which is an excellent variety of eggplant. It's very compact and it produces these eggplants that are relatively small in size, but extremely delicious. I think this is one of the tastiest eggplants I have eaten. And as you can see here, the eggplants look very nice. And it's such a compact plant. It doesn't produce a lot of leaves. It's a pretty compact plant with less foliage and a lot of eggplants that it produces. And as you can see here, the harvest looks pretty good. We are still harvesting eggplants in October. So this is a very productive variety. The other eggplant variety we were growing was the Listada Digandia eggplant. And we were able to harvest a lot of eggplants from this plant. As you can see here, the eggplants are quite large. And in October, they were abundant. We got a lot of eggplants from this plant in October because the plant was pretty well established and was producing these lovely eggplants as you can see here. Now, quality wise and taste wise, the Listada Digandia eggplant is okay. After the entire season, I can conclude that it's not the best eggplant that I've grown, but if you're looking for an abundantly producing plant, yes, this is a good eggplant variety. But next year I might try out growing the purple eggplant, the Black Beauty eggplant. And here you can see a perspective of how tall these eggplants get. And they reach to over 6 feet in height. And as you can see here, producing a lot of eggplants. We were also getting a lot of guavas from our white Arabian guava plant. As you can see here, lot of ripe guavas, very ripe guavas in fact, and you can generally harvest guavas before it gets to this stage, but at this stage they are extremely sweet, very nice tasting. You can see here one of these guavas is slightly green, and this is a fully ripe guava. We also got some harvest from our Mexican guava variety. And we have a lot of Mexican guavas growing in this plant, and we have begun harvesting it. Now our moringa plant is full of life, and as you can see here, completely loaded with flowers and a lot of pods. Our moringa plant produced a lot of moringa pods, as you can see here, and we are harvesting those pods. And it was almost every day that we were harvesting our moringa pods, and they just kept growing. As you can see here, the smaller pods will fatten up and become pods that you see here. So they start out as flowers, then produce small pods, and then finally they swell up to this size. And as you can see here, beautiful looking pods, and you can Google and find some good recipes for moringa pods. There are a lot of things you can do with moringa pods. And for those of you who do not know about moringa, it is called the tree of life. It is an extremely nutritious plant. Its leaves are nutritious. It produces flowers that can be eaten. It also produces pods that you see here that are edible. So overall, a great plant to grow. Okra. We harvested a lot of okra from our okra plants in the raised bed. And since it was October and it was beginning to cool down, we added some mulch on the bed. And as you can see here, beautiful looking okra. We were growing a lot of okra varieties. And as you can see here, this month was a month where we got a lot of okras. Now the production has definitely slowed down, and this will probably be the last month for our okras. But overall, I was pretty happy with the way the okra grew, and we were able to harvest a lot of okras. Swiss chard. This plant, which can almost grow perennially in places like Southern California in Zone 10, which means that you can just plant it once and then keep harvesting this plant, did produce a lot of good leaves. As you can see here, it's a little bit shaken up because of the winds that we had. We had some extremely strong Santa Ana winds last week, but we are harvesting both the ruby Swiss chard as well as the green Swiss chard, as you can see here. Both excellent varieties of Swiss chard that have great nutritional value. Tomatoes. Now, since it's the end of summer, the tomato plant has started to become brown and started to die, which is quite normal. We did harvest a last round of tomatoes. These are the Juliet tomatoes, and the Juliet tomatoes are pretty amazing. They can even grow when the weather is cold. Even the ones that we had on the raised bed, the Juliet tomato was the only tomato variety that we could harvest. Now let's look at the things to do in your garden. You can start pruning some of your fruit trees, but only the ones that have finished producing fruits. Since they will be dormant going into the winters, this is a good time. But if your plant is still bearing fruits, please do not prune them now. Just wait till the fruit production completes so that the plant is not in shock. So to prune your plant or your tree, make sure that there are no suckers growing from the sides and the bottom. As you can see here, the guava plant is known to have these suckers that grow from the bottom, and you need to get rid of that. You can also start planting some vegetables like radish. We are planting some radish seeds in this whiskey barrel container, and hopefully we'll thin this after they have grown. But it's a good time to start your winter vegetables. We are also sowing some peas along the other side of the raised bed, right next to the trellis. So just like we formed the easy trellis on the other side, on the other raised bed for the beans, we also created this other trellis on the other side. It's also an easy trellis with just a different cattle panel that we had, and we just reused that one, and it made a great trellis. Now, one of our YouTube viewer asked a question about the jasmine plant that they saw in the video. So here's a picture of the jasmine plant, and it's actually our neighbor's jasmine plant, and it's quite beautiful. Now, as far as gardening products go, you can find a great deal on gardening products at your local OSH or Orchard Supply Hardware. Since their store is closing, they have a discount of 50 to 80% on all their products, and I did go there last weekend, and I was able to get some good deals on some gardening products. So what did I end up with? Well, just a few things here and there. But if you're looking to buy a lot of items that you want to keep as spare or going into the future, things like fertilizers, insecticides, it's a good place to buy. We wish all our viewers a very happy Halloween. Have fun. So there we have it, folks. That was our episode on the California garden for the month of October. If you like this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, do drop them in the comments box below. We'll see you again soon. Happy gardening.